can never define success by a number. Success cannot be defined by a number. Success is personal.
Let's talk about chapter 1, On the Road to Riches. And really, when people talk with you, I think they probably get an idea that you're thinking about money in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And it's not always what you think, right? And it's because I've got the opportunity to really talk to you over the years. And so is it safe to say that it consumed you for many years? And if it did, do you understand why it consumes so many others? Why the topic of money is all-consuming, whether you have too much or not enough?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's loaded with cool things to talk about. So, number one, with the book, I started out with a story about the first time I made six figures. And, I'm in my 20s, and it did consume me. It was all financial because I felt like if I only got to this number, everything else would get easy in my life. Everyone would feel better in my house. All the things that you think money will fulfill are usually the exact opposite of what it does. And this particular moment, I don't think I actually get to share the story in the book, but it's a powerful representation of kind of growing up and moving on to the next chapter of your own life. We go through these little tiny chapters, and you have these major transformations as a young man or young woman, and moving on to the next part. And I remember feeling so proud. I got this Century Award, and means that I made $100,000 for the year. What you don't see or know is that what I spent on the business that year, or how much it cost to get started, or the things that I was spending to get us moving in the right direction. And so I remember feeling super proud about it. And I remember it being one of the best awards I can remember from a fulfillment standpoint, because I just never ever saw that as being an option growing up. So, to round out the story, and then I'll pull in your question into this, but I remember coming and being ready to share with my family. We do a Sunday night dinner every week with our family. My mom and dad make this amazing meal every week, and my family all gets together. And this was in the earlier days, because again, my younger brother was probably in college or finishing high school. My sister had two young kids. We were starting our family. And so this was the beginning of what we have today, which is so cool that I think everybody should have a Sunday dinner. But if you're blessed enough to have a great family like mine. But the truth is, I sat around Sunday dinner and I couldn't wait to share the news. Like, everybody would share something that's going on. And it happens in a loud and exciting forum. You got to jump in when you have your chance, and then the stories move to the next person. It's like if ADD had a conversation, that's what our family dinners are like, right? And so I get to the point where I'm ready to share with my family how accomplished I feel. And there were two or three things that happened right before this that completely changed my mind and the trajectory of what I would share at the family table for years to come. And someone had made the comment that these people making six figures have no concept of what we're going through here. And then somebody else was talking about their struggle and what was challenging. And all of a sudden, the money and the number felt completely empty. And I also knew that I could no longer share those goals at this table, because it was not going to be received in the way that I had expected it to. See, when you're a financial advisor, you're numb to money in a way that allows you to serve your people. Like a psychiatrist or psychologist is numb to crazy, right? There's some level of crazy we all have, but whatever your crazy is, when you're sharing it with a therapist, they sit across from you and they think it is what it is. Like, they've heard it all. With money, we've seen it all. We've talked about it all. We understand it. It's very, very simple to us. It's just a number. Even if the number is exciting, it's just a number. But to everyone around your dinner table, it's not just a number. It could be their freedom. It could be their road to riches. It could be a whole lot. And I think that conversation that didn't happen changed the trajectory of how I thought of what I would share. It also made me self-evaluate, who am I working for? Am I working for my dad and my mom so I can show them how proud they should be of me? Am I working for my own family? Is a number going to change who I am? And am I really focused on the right things? And in that self-evaluation, I'm not saying I didn't want more. I didn't decide to change. It wasn't like a pinnacle moment that in that day I knew that everything would change. It wasn't, but it was powerful enough that I've never forgotten it. And it's powerful enough that I reflect on it often. It's an empathy moment for me to remember that my family worked their butts off their entire lives to provide me with the life that allowed me to get to that point, that allowed me to have better opportunities, that allowed me to go to college, that allowed me to think bigger. And I was able to take that and remember that somehow, even though this is exciting in my life, it could be defeating to others. And I think that's really, really a powerful thing. And one other thing I think that you brought up is, defining a rich life, right? Defining what's important to you and why it's so important to you is because it's so much deeper. It's not just about what you're doing today. It's about where you're going to be in the future. And that's one of the main reasons that we really started talking about this subject is, it starts off with the Century Award, and it moves on into examples of people that may represent all of who we've been at some point in time in our lives.
So when we're talking about a rich life, some people might have this vision of that rich life being Lamborghinis and Teslas, right? And that's not what you're talking about in many cases. And in some cases, for some people, that is exactly what they want. So when you're in an industry where, as you said, money is just a number, like I'm sure here at this table, you see all kinds of numbers where there is not enough money or a lot of commas, a lot of zeros, and you see all of it in between. How do you define then what is success? Are they the same thing? Is a rich life the same thing as having a successful one? And has your definition of that changed over time?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. Number one, the answer is very simple, and you can never define success by a number. Success cannot be defined by a number. Success is personal. My father came from nothing. Success was loyalty, commitment, going to work every day and showing up, providing a family, a roof over our head, all that level of commitment. My mom started at 15 working. The level of commitment and loyalty and work ethic I learned from them. You can't put a number on what they earned to show the level of success that one has. And you can't at the same time take a 20-something-year-old kid earning six figures and think they've made it. They haven't made anything. They don't know anything. We don't know anything. And so I think when I look at success, the older we get, as through writing this book, you go through lots of edits when you write a book, and you read back your own words, and sometimes you don't like them. Sometimes you don't even like the way you're perceiving it. Sometimes the way you wrote it and the way you're reading it are completely opposite of the way that you think, and you have to help yourself and the reader close that gap. And that was a part of this conversation. The road to riches, the rich life. I tell it in the beginning of the book when my son asked me, "Dad, would you be rich if you didn't have us?" And it was really funny because if you know him, even as a young kid, that's a great question. It's very similar to a question I probably would have asked when I was a kid. But of course the answer is no. What level of richness of life's values would I be holding if I died with a bunch of paper laying next to me and not the family? The family is the richness, the friendships, the relationships, the challenges, all the things that we go through in our lives are the richness of life. And success is how we look at them. Success is how we define our failures, our successes, our wins, our losses. It's really kind of like an overview, and I think the number is unknown. For one person, it could be $25,000 a year and no stress. For another, it could be $2.5 million a year in lavish vacations that allow them to see the world because they never grew up with the world. All those things are part of a successful life. But the most important part of a successful life is your relationships. And without them, we're empty. And that's why the number's so empty.
You have worked really hard to grow and be where you are. And over time in your career as a financial advisor, you have noticed patterns amongst people you've worked with. Maybe you were some of them, maybe at some point you were all of them. And in the book you talked about a guy named hardworking Hank and another one laid back Lonnie. Like, where did they come from in your experience? And would people be surprised that both of those exist in business?
Yeah, another great question. I'm glad you asked that. These people are representations of everyone we've met in our lives, in any business. When I worked for the government, there were hardworking Hanks and laid back Lonnies. When I was at college, there were hardworking Hanks and laid back Lonnies. Laid back Lonnie is a representation that's very easy to understand because it's easy to want to keep up with the Joneses and then to relax. And there's two directions that can go. And number one, you can keep working and it never be enough. Or number two, you can want the results of major hard working and success, but never be putting in the effort. You're rolling into work at 10, you're leaving, you control your own schedule, let's say. You roll in late, you leave early, your lunches are long, and you're disappointed that your life is not as successful as it should be. I call that the generational gap we've seen with all of the college kids that they come out and expect to drive the car that their parents have worked 20 years to have, or the house they want to live in that has to be just like their parents, and they're trying to close the gap of what they view success to be, and they forget there's a lot of hard work in between that. And it's okay, we all forgot that. So it's not a judgment, it's just a truth, right? Hardworking Hank is a little bit different because Hank loves what he does. Hank's great at what he does. Hank is a hard worker and the kind of person that probably 50 years ago would have been the guy that you celebrated. The person that mom would say, look at your father. He's an amazing man. He works harder than anybody. Do you know what he does to put food on this table? But hardworking Hank today is difficult because now the world's equal. Now men and women work together. Now husbands and wives partners share the world they live in. It's a different world. And if you get too far into it, even if you love it, you lose the things you love the most, or you lose sight of putting them in the right priority order. We do it in work all the time. Someone comes to us and like, I'm working on all these projects and I'm never going to get through all these. And I say, well, let's just pause and let's reprioritize. Let's reshuffle. So hardworking Hank is a representation of so many people in business, but for advisors, it's easy to get into it because you're helping so many people that it becomes like a ministry. And so it's a gap between knowing when to turn it off and when to turn it on. And that can be a real challenge. And I think both those humans are representations of characters of people that I know. They both represent people that I know really, really well. And they've got a couple of other people peppered in there that made them the perfect character for the book.
What is the mix of those two that make a successful person in business?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Number one, it goes back to your question about success, right? What is it that we prioritize in our lives? It's the life-work balance. What are the things that we believe in that are most important? And are they getting the right time? and energy in our lives. And the truth is, I don't know the right balance, but what I can tell you is hardworking Hank was disappointed that they were working all the time and they weren't ever able to take vacations, and their family wasn't getting the time and energy they wished they could get. And laid back Lonnie felt like a failure, but they weren't putting in the work that they needed, and they knew the work that was needed. So it was very challenging for them because the disconnect was all on them. And so both people felt like they were failing, and both people were really just at the right point in their lives they were supposed to be at to identify it and change it. And I can't say that one or the other is more right than wrong. I think work ethic always outduels most talent. So a lot of laid back Lonnies are the unbelievable basketball player who barely warms up and takes practice as a joke and just goes into the game and is talented, but they never ever really reach their potential because they were too relaxed. They didn't work hard enough. And then you've got the hard worker who may have never been able to realize their talent because they didn't take times to relax and breathe. They didn't take time to actually assess the work they were doing. They were just head down, work all the time. And you know what? I think I've been a little bit of both in my life. I think that when I write this book and I listen to it, I'm going through the Audible right now to approve it. And sometimes it's difficult because I think about what I would be rewriting or how I would change what I say or where I'm at now versus where I wrote it. And the true value of that is I've been a representation of these things, and I'm humbly bringing these stories not from a place of judgment or a place of I know it all, but from a place of experience and understanding and empathy.
This chapter is focused on how you grew, right? On how you got to where you are today. And one of the things that I know we've all seen that has worked is your focus on discipline. How has discipline served you? And we know discipline is not easy. What have you done to make it so it works for you in your business and your life?
I think this is one of the biggest recipes for success in anything we do. I think discipline is the hidden secret that people don't understand. The more process oriented you are, the more you create your life around things that make you successful, systems and processes, standard operating procedures, SOPs, whatever it may be. The more discipline we have in what we do, the more successful we end up being. And because discipline requires prioritization, discipline requires steps, discipline is freedom. Aristotle started that, right? Through discipline, you'll find freedom. And the quote is not perfect, but that's really what he was saying. And then there's Jocko, the former Navy SEAL, who's on every leadership podcast and an amazing person. I quote him in the book, discipline equals freedom. These are things that are extremely true and valuable. Why is discipline so powerful? It's because it's like being a child, right? Children need boundaries. The reason they need boundaries is because without boundaries, they throw temper tantrums. They think they need everything and they really want everything. And it's a parent's job to help create the path towards success. Success as a human. And we were talking about this before we started, but a parent's number one job is to make you a good human. Somebody that's willing to give to the world something, right? And in order to do that, you need some level of discipline. Now, you can argue all day long about the level of discipline a child needs. Parents will disagree and agree on all kinds of stuff. Generations agree and disagree. But here's the reality. Chaos is a loser's game. Chaos means you cannot function. Chaos in my brain has made me weak, not strong. Discipline is the opposite. If I know I'm great at a certain time of the day, I need to be disciplined enough to be working best during that time. We record these videos at a certain time every week because, quite frankly, on Fridays, I feel a little bit more relaxed than I do on a Monday. Stupid, I understand, but it's me. And understanding that gives me the ability to perform and do the best job I possibly can. I'm disciplined enough to have a morning routine. We're disciplined enough to have our children do certain things all the time that are mandatory for them becoming good humans. These are all things that create the world you want. See, you can't reach a goal without discipline. You can't have success without discipline. Chaos can be a creative place, but it's the fool's gold, because real gold comes in discipline. And I think growing up, I thought it was the opposite. My father was disciplined. My mother was fairly open, but my father was strict and disciplined. And all of it was great for me. All of it was right for me. All of it was misunderstood until I became my own father to my own kids. And I started to see the very things that were so powerful. I also saw the paths that some of my friends took that weren't so great, and they didn't have that discipline. See, through discipline is also love. If I have a recipe for success, if I have a recipe for great meatballs and they're perfect, and I share them with you, and you decide to follow nothing and it turns out horrible, and then you don't understand why, it's because you didn't have the discipline to take the recipe and create it. Now, what I believe is you should have discipline, but allow time for creativity. Don't be afraid to have moments in our days, in our lives, for freedom, for true freedom. But true freedom does not lie in pure chaos. Order is where it lies.
I love that recipe analogy. Like, that is such a good one. And I also think that people look at other successful people and think it's magic. Like, I mean, I think they think, oh,
Lucky.
lucky, magic, like both of them the same
Yeah.
thing. And that's not true. Like, discipline takes time, effort, and work. And what you've also been able to build, which has taken discipline, is a team. So as we round out this chapter, talking about the best advice you have for building the right team right from the start. Because you mentioned earlier, in that first year, you made 6 figures. Not in first year, but in that year that you were talking
certainly
about.
not the first year.
Yeah, no. But it takes time and it takes money. So a lot of that is bringing in the right people to help you. And what would you say has worked for you in building the right people to help you go straight to the top?
I think this is something, again, that is, I don't know why it's such a secret, but I think people are afraid to be who they are. You have to tap into what makes you special, your unique ability. Our unique ability is something that will allow us to attract people. I had a call with a Zoom or a FaceTime just a couple of days with one of the nieces I have, and I have lots of family. But we were talking about high school and how difficult it can be, and some of the things, some of the situations that arise. And I said, here's a secret. The more you are yourself, the more people will be attracted to you, and not the kind of people you don't want, but the kind of people you need, the energy you need. So if your shoulders are back and your head's up and you walk through the world, take a high school football game. Don't walk slunched down. Don't look like you don't belong. Everyone feels that way. Everybody feels that way. But the difference between the person that stands up straight and has great energy and the person that actually feels and shows how they feel out to the world, and they're not being authentic to who they are, they have different results. And so what does that have to do with having a team? What it has to do with having a team is building great relationships starts with a great team. Like, having a great team starts with the relationship. It starts with actually understanding that the energy I'm putting out into the world, you're receiving, and you're going to make stronger. Our energy together is going to be triple, if not quadruple as strong, not just double. 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2. It equals 3 or 4 or 6. Coupled with the right person or right teammate, it could be 10 times the value. So when I'm talking about building great teams or having the right people around us, I'm talking about great energy. You are what you put out into the world. And if you put great energy into the world, you get it. The other thing I think is really important with teams are you have to be authentic. I'm not afraid to say something that I think is important. I'm not afraid to have difficult conversations. I'm not afraid to ask my teammates or employees if something's wrong, if they need help, if something's off in their personal life. I'm not rolling through my life worrying about how that might be received or what landmine I might step on if I don't find out how I can help that human. Because if you're helping people and you're building a better relationship, usually it's going to end up in the right direction. And that's going to build one hell of a team.